emotions and sentiments are than substance, a lot of heat without light. So, if farmers sometimes are confused or there is some amount of apprehension, it's understandable. The second is we must realize agriculture is in crisis, has been in crisis for a long time. So, farmers have a lot of hidden anger, suppressed anger, rage. All of us feel that. The farmer suicides, the regular decline of the farmers relatively. A farmer with 10 acres of land 30, 40 years ago had some dignity. Today, a chaprasi in government is far better than a 10-acre farmer. And almost no youngster wants to continue in farming. And if he does continue in farming, it's very difficult to get a suitable bride for him. These are realities. You may laugh about that, but that's the reality.
Social reality.
The conditions in villages are oppressive. There's no proper educational access. Therefore, they have to spend a lot of money for some half-decent education, a lot of money for health care. So there's a lot of anger. Now, if the anger is channelized constructively and creatively, it leads to positive results. But if in that rage, suppressed rage now comes out because there is some rallying point, something or the other, and if you cut the nose to spite the face without understanding your own interests, then it can do harm. But there is a genuine anger and rage and distress. We must understand that and respect that. The smart thing for the farmers is recognize that it is necessary, ask for it, make it work, and ask for more. This is not enough. A lot more is needed. The governments need to do a lot more to help the farm sector because that is helping half of India. It's not helping some XYZ, it's helping half of India. It's helping India itself. There's a third issue, and that is, remember, in a vast continental country of 1.38 billion people, only a small pocket of India, Punjab, Haryana, a little bit of Western UP, only they are resisting. The rest of India, all the southern states, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Maharashtra, Gujarat, Western India, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, and Orissa, none of them are complaining.
Right.
So you must not confuse certain concerns or agitation in a small part of India as a great national movement. Because something is happening near Delhi, we tend to exaggerate importance of that. If somebody catches a cold in Delhi, we tend to sneeze in Hyderabad or Bengaluru. So we must put things in perspective. And there are reasons why in Punjab, Haryana, there is great concern. One, the Mandi Act enacted in the early days of independence, in the Pratap Singh Khairan government, he was the chief minister and Sir Chauthuram was the agriculture minister. They were very progressive, far-sighted people. So far. Very wise people. It is their work that led to prosperity in agriculture in Punjab, Haryana, undivided Punjab in those days. And the mandis worked very well. Unlike markets anywhere else in the country, the mandis in Punjab, Haryana are excellent. I've seen them long ago. They were superb. They were highly respected. The mandi leaders are very influential and respected. The best infrastructure was with the markets, with the mandis. In those days when there were no hotels, you wanted a decent guest house for officers, the market guest house is the best one. I remember during our training, we spent time in the market yard guest house. So they have tremendous political and social influence. And the mandis now, they will continue to operate, but their monopoly is not going to be there. Naturally, there will be some amount of disquiet, and they have influence. And the farmers feel loyal to those leaders. The second is, most of the people who are agitating, if you notice, and most of the demands pertain to rice and wheat procurement. Because Kharif, they produce rice and supply to FCI. There is no local sale of rice, and most of the rice is not generally sold in market. It is a crude variety of rice. It's a fine variety of rice that people normally consume. So it goes to the FCI and the PDS. And wheat. And somehow, somebody planted the wrong idea. There will not be procurement of rice and wheat in the future, and MSP will be removed. That's not true. That's a policy continuing for 50 years, that will continue. So this misapprehension. And the third is certainly political. When one party is increasingly dominating many parts of India, other parties try to gang up. They use any weapon. That's true with every party. BJP did the same thing when they were in opposition. Even now they do the same thing in states where they're in opposition. You do one thing, you say one thing in government, or do one thing in government, you say another thing in opposition. That's the standard staple of politics world over, but in India, much more so. So it's a
In this context,
combination of these factors.
sir, about the discussion of government procurement, I would like to share with our viewers for their information. Earlier in the day, the government of India has shared that over 40 lakh 53,000 farmers have benefited this Kharif season with the MSP scheme, wherein the government has spent over 70,000 crore rupees for procurement of food grains. This is just information I wanted to share in context of the apprehension about MSP not being in place.
Now, this will give you some idea, Abhishek. We have roughly about 17 to 20 crore farmers in India. Rice and wheat, only 140 lakhs. But in our imagination, they are so big because that's the culture. Everything is about rice and wheat, for which the demand is declining. Production is growing, supply is increasing. Price is increasing for other commodities, fruits, vegetables, etc. But still, our whole thinking is about rice, wheat, rice, wheat, rice, wheat. We're not able to go beyond that. It's a very skewed approach to public policy and thinking.
So what is the need of the hour, sir? Do we need to process our rice and wheat and export it or convert it into other food products? Or do we need to emphasize or maybe regulate a little more to diversify the crop? What do you see as a fitting solution?
We must encourage diversification by economic means, not by regulation, not by controlling.
Right, sir.
If the demand is increasing in areas where there is shortage and where there are better foods, higher value foods, fruits, vegetables, milk, eggs, meat, fish, etc., then rice and wheat producers are among the most fertile soils of India, irrigated soil. These are about the most enterprising farmers of India. If you create incentives for them to move to areas where there is greater value and you can meet the needs of India better, then that's good for the farmers, good for the society, good for the country. For instance, pulses and cooking oil, we are importing the largest quantity in the world. Just as rice and wheat, we have the largest storage and granaries in India. In pulses and cooking oil, we are the biggest importers.
Sir.
Now, we must ensure that there is a decent price with all kinds of mechanisms to the farmers and decent income and encourage production so that we don't depend on imports for these food grain, for these commodities. We must promote value addition up the chain and we must trade the global market. We must encourage the great retail chains to come in, the global supply chains from Walmart to Carrefour to Tesco to Indian chains and others, so that lakhs of crores of investment flows into agriculture to modernize the infrastructure, add value, and to compress the market chain so that the farmer gets a higher share of the price. More equally, you add value, you create employment in the ancillary industries, agro industries, and you penetrate the global markets, and prices are relatively stable. So a lot of things need to be done now.
How do you, and I had a small solution, sir, in my little experience. How can we fit in millets in this context, sir, with high nutritional value, less capital intense, and more of variety? It can be diversified
It's a great question. It's a great question. What's happened over the years? First, let's understand what happened. Millets are essentially grown in the dry areas, right? Your jowar, your bajra, your ragi, and other commodities are generally dry crops. They're not wetland crops. Two, for some reason, because irrigated areas tend to dominate the culture, there was a false belief that millets are inferior foods and rice and wheat are superior foods. Actually, in serious nutritionist, millets are actually better foods. In economics, there is a concept called Giffen goods. When incomes rise a little bit, you give up millets and you go for rice or wheat because you think wrongly that is superior food. That is a sign of prosperity to move from ragi to, let us say, rice and wheat. And the governments unwisely encourage Rice and wheat in the PDS, 2 rupees rice, 1 rupee rice, something else, something else. And over a period of time, two things happened. The dryland farmers who produced the millets, because the demand further went down, they suffered. In fact, 70% of India is dryland. And in agriculture, they are the poorest. Even in the poor sector, the poorest and the most suffering people are the dryland farmers. And two, the slightly better off farmers with more fertile lands and with irrigation, more enterprising people, instead of innovating and going for high value products and high incomes to meet the demands of India and globally, they are content with simply raising these food grains. See the damage done on all counts. And nutritionally, we became poorer because millets are actually nutritionally superior. But now, if you notice, in some of the cities, the millets are now making an appearance again because of the market, not because of the government. They have become now fashionable. You have now ragi restaurants, ragi doshas. For instance, eat only millets now. I don't eat rice any longer or
Oh,
wheat.
great.
So slowly they're becoming more and more fashionable, but that is after 40, 50 years of immense damage. So bad policies and bad policies of government and bad attitudes of society do immense damage to agriculture and to our own health and nutrition. Now we have to figure out how to encourage millets, enhance their productivity, and encourage the farmers to raise them more and the consumers to consume more because they're better for health. They're more nutritious. And progressively move from rice and wheat in the irrigated areas to the other crops for which the demand is increasing and nutritional needs demand it.
So, so in this light, if the government takes measures like inculcating a major portion of the midday meal scheme with millets and including millets in the PDS, and also maybe our prime minister giving a call for correcting our national course of popular culture. Like all we look up to you, sir. So all such people, who are considered as the leaders, thought leaders of the society, or the celebrities who influence. So if we encourage this, I think. It will reduce a great burden even on the water intense crops also, sir. I think it saves a lots of money.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Abhishek. I completely agree with you. The
Uh,
political leaders, the party leaders, the civil society, media, we must all propagate this. One, millets, as you said, rightly consume less water. The moment there's irrigation, you're going for very high water consuming crops, namely two of them primarily, rice and wheat, in the south rice, or sugarcane. They're guzzlers. In a water-starved country, when groundwater is falling in most pockets, and the groundwater table is falling, and you have dark zones and all kinds of stuff. And the few farmers who get water by tube wells, they simply go for paddy, and many farmers, their wells dry up. It's unjust, it is economically unproductive for the country, and we are producing the wrong kinds of foods. In all respects, it's absolutely necessary, but you cannot force it. You must prepare people and you
right, sir.
must win their minds. You must also educate them about the two things. One is the nutritional advantage of millets and move towards procurement of those as far as practicable and then propagating those. And two, for the enterprising farmers in the irrigated areas, the greater value of other crops which can be easily raised there because in dry lands you can't raise many crops. The moment you don't have enough water, there is a limitation. Whereas here there's no limitation. The sky is the limit. Your imagination is your limit. So you can go more for value-added crops where your incomes grow and you can meet the demands, Indian and global, etc. So I absolutely agree that we need a movement of that. Even in rice, for instance, there is this fascination for the fine variety, whereas actually unpolished crude rice is better for nutrition. Even when I ate rice, I always used to eat that. But in our social welfare hostels, PDS, what is the discussion even today? We will ensure you get only fine rice because that became fashionable. We don't understand our nutritional needs, and you want to double polish the rice, and all the minerals and the slight coating of protein, they're all there in the outer layer.
The
You
fiber is
remove
lost,
that,
sir.
we don't realize the nutritional value. You only eat some starch, nothing else. And Ultimately, we become diabetics. They say South India is the diabetic capital of the world today. So there are a lot of distortions: health, nutrition, economics, farmers' welfare, India's farm needs. A whole lot of. So we must combine all those. Once people understand that and they see the value, and you give some encouragement and incentives, definitely people will switch over.
Sometime after when the lockdown opens up, I would like to share with you my paper, sir. I wrote for the Russian Center in India at Delhi, exclusively on the agriculture sub policy pertaining to millet, sir, and that has it was widely applauded. And I was also invited to Russia to discuss the same with the
Wonderful.
youth leaders
Do
there,
send
sir.
me by email. I'll be happy to go through that and learn from
Sir,
that.
sir. Um Two other questions, sir, before we end. How do you see the role of the food processing sector, sir? Like, we have huge scope in that, given the amount of educated youth coming out and the produce. If we can actually convert our raw food into processed food, even for domestic consumption as well as exports, I think we have a huge.
Absolutely critical. Absolutely critical. You see, various estimates show that only about 3% of our food is processed, the perishable commodities. Ranging from 20 to 30%, some people say even 40% of our perishable foods, fruits and vegetables, they are rotting because there's no proper cold storage and processing and value addition. And agriculture and industry and services are totally isolated. They're in the various different silos, whereas world over they're integrated. Agriculture provides raw material, you process it, you add value, you create employment, you stimulate the economy. And whenever the prices tend to go up, processed foods come in, you also add some supplements. You take, for instance, your corn, maize. A kg of maize will probably give you 20, 30, whatever rupees it is. But the moment it becomes cornflakes, Kellogg's or some other company, they're selling you and me at 400, 500 rupees a packet. We are happily
Yes, sir.
buying. It gives you
Yeah.
20, 30 days breakfast and we are eating. Now,
Yes.
in this value addition, there is a lot of industry. There is technology, there is storage, there is transportation, there is processing, and there is supplementation. You are adding supplements, other nutritional products. And you are giving a ready-to-eat product at home so that no, you don't have to. A lady doesn't have to wake up and then do dosha, other things. No, every day. Now, women, men, all should be a part of the workforce, and we must reduce the unnecessary labor. It's nutritious, and 10 rupees or 15 rupees for breakfast is not a big deal for most of the people. So it's win-win-win, and it creates a lot of employment. And you can create this in the agricultural areas, not in big cities in distant areas. The industry can come locally. Small towns can grow. And there
Absolutely,
can
sir.
be linkage between the villages and small towns. We have to bridge the gap between the rural economy and urban economy. So storage and processing and value addition are absolutely critical for Indian consumption and global consumption. The globe wants sophisticated products. You must be, what did Amul do? Amul do? They simply borrowed the best practices of all the multinationals and or Vijaya in Andhra Pradesh or Amul in Gujarat or some other products. They're as good as any in the rest of the world, and they found a fantastic place in the market. There was branding, there was value addition. So the same thing must happen in every sector. But unless aggregation scale is there, unless technology is there, unless management is there, unless the capital is available, these four requirements: technology, management, and marketing. Technology, management, marketing, and capital. All four will come only with scale. They can never come on a small scale. You can't take risks and you can't generate. Without these four, you cannot really penetrate the markets, you cannot add value, you cannot do branding. So the challenge is our farms are small. We chose to keep them that way because we have land ceilings for a variety of reasons. Then post-harvest, how to aggregate. Milk is a fantastic example. What did happen? What happened in milk? While producers of milk are small producers, on an average 2 or 3 liters, one or two buffaloes and some cows here and there, we overcame the disadvantage by aggregation, whether milk chilling centers or a dairy or a branding. So your management, your branding, your marketing, your technology, your capital, they all came with scale. All agriculture requires that scaling without upsetting the farmer, protecting their rights. So all these efforts should be in that direction. Everybody wins in the process. No farmer says, because of a dairy industry, I am losing. Farmer actually is gaining. If today there's no market for the milk, it has to be simply discarded. Whereas now there's no worry. You simply refrigerate it, you pasteurize it, and you process it, you convert it into all kinds of products, and you can sell it and you brand it. There's a value addition. So that is what should happen to all agriculture. We already have it. We have already had the milk revolution in India because of a certain process, thanks to Varghese Kurian and others. And we have to learn from that. In every sector, that's the approach.
Otherwise, I had a question about startups in my mind, sir. But now that you spoke about aggregation, I would like to add one more question. Uh, India predominantly, like when we look at the small farmers who have less than 1 acre land, we have a huge chunk of them. But why couldn't we inculcate community farming or cooperative farming among them, sir? What do you see as a challenge? What?
Abhishek, world over, if there is no incentive, there is no recognition, it's my land, my property. If I do well, I benefit. Don't do well, I lose. If that link is not very clear, the collective property is everybody's. Nobody cares. That's not required. Some people attempted that, it didn't work. Russia attempted, spectacularly failed. China attempted, but Chinese rejuvenation and growth started when they recognized the holdings of each farmer and then the property rights and then gave them the freedom. Until that time, it was always messy. India attempted on some scale, it didn't work, the so-called central state farms.
Pardon me, sir. Pardon me, sir. It is not about the intervention of the state or the government in this essentially, sir, but 2, 3, 4, 5 farmers coming together, pooling their resources commonly. You know, when you have a particular share of land and you put man hours into it, it could have actually helped them use their resources, pool their resources. So,
no, if indeed a few farmers come together for economies of scale, there's nothing that need to discourage them. I have no quarrel, but I don't think we need to waste too much effort for two reasons. One, even small farms are actually reasonably productive. If you take actually the per acre productivity, it is higher in small farms in India. It is paradoxical. Why? Because the small farmer is able to give more time and attention and labor. He and his wife and family are working on the field. And they give enormous attention. Agriculture is labor intensive. And two, Indian farmers, while they may not be educated in a formal sense, they are very smart in embracing technology. Take the BT cotton seeds. The moment the boll gourd cotton, which is able to protect the cotton farms from this American bollworm, Heliothis, once they understood the seed, the genetically mutated seed is good for them, 97% of Indian cotton farmers embraced it very quickly. So farmers learn from each other. So I have no objection to what you are suggesting, but if you take the effort that is required and the benefit that accrues, you focus on aggregation post-harvesting, giving the farmer better price discovery. Because we have only this much energy, time and talent. If you focus on everything, you will achieve very little. Focus on the most critical areas where the biggest gains are likely to be. Therefore, post-harvest aggregation, in my mind, is the most easy thing. It's the most critical thing.
Right, sir. I think it will also ensure that there's a proper chain and accountability also. That way it will be easier to do a post-harvest aggregation. So before we answer my last and crucial question, as someone who has always encouraged youth to work socially and who have been in forefront of motivating youth, especially in our Telugu states, I would also say pan-India. But as somebody coming from Hyderabad, I would also emphasize on Telugu states. So what is your message for youth, sir? Now we have educated youth coming out, very well informed and aware youth coming out. So what would you suggest to them as a startup in agri sector? Any message for them, sir?
No, it's a great question. Abhishek, one of the challenges from a macro level, I'll come to entrepreneur a little later, is the capital formation in agriculture is very low in India. It's actually declining. The private sector capital formation is roughly 70-80%. Government is only 20%. Government is stagnant. Private sector is actually falling because of the regulation, because of lack of economies of scale, because of lack of quality, because of bad policy. Many people don't find it worthwhile to enter the agri sector. The same effort, the same capital elsewhere, they feel there's more money to be made. I would urge them now, because the government is removing the regulations, there is a level playing field. And many Indians, they come from the farm origins. Wherever we are, whatever we practice or do, our origins are in the farm sector. Our parents, grandparents are farmers. So we have this love, this sentiment, this passion for farm sector. Now, innovate, be smart, but don't be afraid to enter. For two reasons. This is an area which is not tapped yet in India adequately. We are still in a very primitive level of farming. The value addition, the supply chains, we haven't really done much. So it's an opportunity actually. That is very underdeveloped means with a bit of effort, you can quickly reach the apex of the market. You can succeed very well. If it's already a mature, developed market, for you, entry is not there. So far, there are artificial entry barriers because of foolish restrictions. Once they are removed, if you succeed, you can actually make good success commercially. And two, you have immense satisfaction because you are helping a sector that you love. And you're helping the poorest and the weakest of our lot, our people. But be smart, bring technology, bring the linkages. Collaboration and the linkages in all the sectors, transport, storage, processing, retailing, and niche areas, export. So the whole lot of things. Don't look at only small things in silos. So see where you have greater ability to navigate, where your interest lies, where the opportunity lies. Be smart about it and take advantage of these laws before the big players enter. If enough of these small entrepreneurs with passion enter, no matter how many big players enter, there is competition. We require competition. We don't want monopoly of another big fellow. Therefore, farmers, producers, organizations, the small entrepreneurs, the cooperatives, many other if you have multiple players, when will market economy work? When there are multiple sellers and multiple buyers, they all have information, they all freely exchange. So if you are part of that, and if you bring in innovation and passion together, I think there's a great opportunity. There are some challenges, there are some risks. But then how will there be great rewards without some risks?
Absolutely. I would not like to take much of your time, sir. As you know, you have another program to proceed to. So, from the bottom of my heart, I would like to thank you so much for spending your time with us, sir, here at SCube, and also giving your most valuable insight. As always, it is very, very enlightening to interact with you, sir. Looking forward to interactions on other pertinent and important topics as your time permits, sir. Thank you. Thank you so much once again.
My pleasure, Abhishek. Wish you all the best.